Gamers, give me just a few more minutes and we can start this madness. I honestly have like no idea what else to call this. This is a mad project. But I'll happily inform you that I'm grinning from year to year. Just one more minute. Actually, I think my clock is kind of messed up. Because lately we have had like outages. Like power outages. So I think my computer turned off and the clock doesn't like automatically fixes itself for some reason. But okay. Let's do this. Come over here. Cool slideshow. Make sure everything is working on the stream. Yeah. Okay, very cool. Gamers, everybody who's watching, maybe future job prospects, welcome. Let's get started. I don't think there's any easy way or perfect way to get this going. So, Project Rebirth, what the hell is this? Well, it is a mod of Lineage 2. When I say a mod, I kind of want to bring up the idea that extensive modifications have been done to both the client side, that is developed by NCSoft, as well as the server side, that is developed by the community, that sustains like private servers of Lineage, or modifications to the official servers for Lineage, and so on. So when you think about Project Rebirth, you need to think of Lineage 2, and you need to think of it as something with a lot of changes. I have no idea why my voice is quivering. So, this whole project is an exercise in experimentation and implementation. What do I mean by this? When I keep working on Lineage 2, when I have kept working on Lineage 2 throughout my life, every time I learn something new, I learn how to do something that I didn't know before. And this project is kind of the culmination of that. It's getting to the point where years, literally years worth of information are condensed into a single thing. And it's just like my biggest passion project in life, really. I don't really have anything else that would like surpass this. This is done without access to developer tools. This is done without access to, more importantly, developer documentation. That is the big spooky part. When modifying Lineage 2, you have to make quite a lot of experimentation. You just need to try things, save it, hope the game boots up, hope the change that you made actually work in the way that you think it does. And yeah, this is very much an exercise in that description that I just gave you. And of course, this project being a big modification of something that already exists, the changes that are happening, because they go down all the way to like a fundamental level, those changes become a game design problem. I say problem, but what I actually mean is just the change that you're making, it comes from a game design perspective. For example, if you're adding levels to an RPG, those new levels that you're adding, it comes from a progression design. So with all the changes that are happening to the project, with all the changes that are happening to Lineage, you end up with something that is an amalgamation of so many different game design disciplines that we're gonna talk about in just a little bit. And of course, the phrase that's here is, if the rules are being thrown out of the windows, new rules need to be written, which is pretty much game design in a nutshell. So, to anyone that's not really that informed on Lineage 2, don't worry. I'll try to do my best to give you a little history lesson. So, Lineage 2 was released in South Korea in the 1st of October 2003. Yeah, that's right. This game is a really strange game for a lot of reasons. And if we're going to get like really deep into it, we could probably spend like 5 to 6 hours here just talking about this game. But trying to get to the point of the project and of all the changes that have been made to it, we kind of have to keep going. We can't really stop. Let me just make sure those things are working. You guys can hear me, right? Everything is working? I think everything is working. Dude, I have no idea why this is giving me so much anxiety. I'm so good at public speaking. I'm so good, but today I'm just shaky. We can do this. Focus on the big picture, okay? Let's go. So, something that is very interesting is that Lineage 2 got released in 2003. The environment for MMORPGs back then is World of Warcraft being released, I think, in the same year. In 2001, I believe, Final Fantasy XI was released. Very close to these games as well. EverQuest 2 came out. So this is not the first generation of 3D MMOs. That is like Meridian 59, the first EverQuest, and a few other games. I think Dark Age of Camelot is also part of the Lineage generation, more or less. But this is like the second or third generation of 3D MMOs. So what Lineage was pushing for at the time that it came out was like technical perfection. Like the game was supposed to look extremely amazing for the time. I think it does. I think it still looks pretty good. There's clearly some interesting decisions that they took from longevity perspective that we can talk about, but that's maybe we'll save that discussion for the end. This game had a really tough challenge in front of it when it released, because Lineage 1, I think released in like 98, was such a success in Korea that honestly, this is a little like pulling it out of my ass, but seriously, Lineage 1 to like the Asian market is very similar to like how World of Warcraft is to the Western market when it comes to MMOs. So Lineage 1 is truly like this phenomenon, this event that literally gets coverage from like national news in South Korea. People call the generation of people who got addicted to the first Lineage as the lost generation, because they're all like, all you guys do is stay inside and play games, like go be productive or something. So this is more or less the context in which Lineage 2 was released, okay? Lineage 1 set all those like media cases. The second and third generation of 3D MMOs are coming out, and Lineage 2 is right there at the forefront as one of the big contenders of the genre. The Lineage identity that the entire franchise has, like even to this day, all versions of Lineage 2, all versions of Lineage 1, the mobile versions even, they all share a very similar blueprint, a very similar like soul, if you will. We can be a little specific about what that is, and we can talk about it, but just keep that in mind. This game is unfortunately competing against itself, because when Lineage 2 gets released, it never really overshadows the first Lineage. And from developer comments back then, we know that NCSoft wanted people to migrate to Lineage 2, close off Lineage 1, and develop Lineage 2. Can you imagine what a weird world that would be? For everyone that's like very familiar with Lineage 2, we're so used to the developer like treating us like second-class citizens. That whole idea that this game was meant to be actually where the company puts its focus is just a little bit insane. And it's also the reason why like C4 has so much content, but we can talk about that later. Alright, hold on. I need a moment. Alright, gamers. So, Lineage 1, Lineage 2, the Lineage franchise as a whole, it is a series that really focuses on character progression, on player progression. This is a game that you play where you always have a way to make your character stronger in one way or another. It is also a game where player-to-player interactions, either alliances or conflicts between players, really are the creme de la creme. You know, they're really like the flavor that keeps people engaged. Because as we will very soon see, the environment that this game was designed for wasn't really for a very reactive gameplay. It wasn't really for a moment-to-moment gameplay experience, but rather everything on the macro level, more like alliances that take over castles, that then can control cities, and then from there you form alliances, you break alliances. The game design itself is very focused on generating these moments where people will either find a way to ally themselves with someone else or find a way to go into conflict with someone else. A practical example of what I'm saying is most of these games are open world, and whenever you're outside a city, you can be attacked by other players. So the game will then incentivize this idea of creating conflicts or alliances between players by spawning raid bosses out in the open field, and many times those raid bosses will be the only source of a certain item or one of the only sources of something. And by using progression and scarcity, I think scarcity is a better pronunciation, but yeah, by doing that, they will create scenarios where players will be trying to fight each other to see who gets to kill the boss, who gets to take the loot, and that is more or less, in a very narrow type way, the soul of what Lineage is supposed to be. Or, sorry, not is supposed to be, what it actually is. This scenario, this situation that I just described to you is quite honestly the one factor that you can always be assured will be present in any version of Lineage, no matter what. I prefer C5 too. I think C5 is pretty good. So, with all of that explained, and with you knowing that Project Rebirth is this extensive modification of Lineage on a server-side emulation and on a client-side modification, like how... Why? Why go through the trouble of doing something like this? And of course, this didn't start with the idea that I now have of what Project Rebirth is. In fact, this didn't start with me thinking about any sort of project. It was just curiosity. I like the game. I'm a little bit of a grammar Nazi. So when the game made mistakes on translations, when the game made mistakes on things like that, I was like, dude, I can fix this. What do I need to be able to change this item? What do I need to be able to change this skill? And that was like my first step into client modification. And then as the years go by, as the time goes by, you start learning more things and you understand a little bit more how the game actually works. Once you're at that point, it's game over, or at least for me it was. So curiosity led me to experimenting a lot with client modifications, which then is an exercise in reverse engineering. Maybe I'm being like I'm tooting my own horn a little bit too much here by calling this reverse engineering. But when you don't have documentation and you don't have the original developer tools, you kind of just have to try shit out and see what's gonna happen. Just save, you decrypt something, you change it, you save it, and you pray really hard that the game doesn't crash. 99.9% of times the game will crash. So, eventually, through that process, thank you, Liam. Through that process of try and error, through that process of, if you see this thing right here, with some green text and a red text here at the bottom. I'm not sure if you guys can see my cursor, but this thing right here is one of the documents where I was like, okay, so this actually means this. This means this. After extensively trying to figure out what the hell this one right here was. Okay, this one is an item one, this one is a skill one, so not exactly, but more or less. Once I started to get like really involved with this, I started to develop like this, I don't know, it was almost like, I want to know more. I want to know more about this thing that is really like occupying my mind. So I went on this weird journey of playing every single Lineage game I could find. So this is when I go back and I play Lineage 1 on private servers. I play Lineage 1 Remastered on the Korean servers. I play Lineage W. I play Lineage 2M on the Western servers. I had already played 2M on the Korean servers as well. And I'm just like, my entire life subtly is just studying this game, seeing which systems are present in all these games, what is the common denominator, what is happening, what is Lineage. So I was really desperately trying to answer that question. I think today I have a pretty good idea of what Lineage is. But yeah, all of this is happening, and Lineage, before any of this, Lineage is just responsible for so many formative experiences to me. Because if you know anything about me, you know that I kinda lived my life like a ping pong ball between Sweden and Brazil. So the place that I could have a stable group of friends was Lineage. The place that I had like a lot of first time experiences was Lineage. For example, learning that strangers do not always have your best interests in heart, in mind, You know what I want to say. I got scammed for the first time in Lineage. I was like, oh yeah, I guess people can be assholes. And I also was surprised for the first time in Lineage, where after I got scammed, I was like really wary. And then I talked to someone who was like 100% sure was going to scam me, and turns out they were a really nice person. So, a lot of those experiences that maybe you would have like in high school, I was a weird nerd, and I was having it at home with Lineage. Thank you, NCSoft. That is not a good thank you, okay? That is a bitter one. So, with all of those ideas, I couldn't handle it anymore. I was trying to be a normal person and play other games. I was trying to play Lineage with my friends. If you see here, Echo is in chat. I think Echo remembers this. We were playing Lineage 2 together, and I was just this insufferable person. Like, every time, I would just be like, dude, this game could be so much better if this was different. Dude, this game would be so much better if this specific thing wasn't here. Dude, dual boxing is so dumb. Why do they allow this? Because then support players, like, every single time I tried to play a video game, I was just going crazy, thinking about, dude, I can make Lineage better. And it eventually got to an explosion point. Like, fine, I'll do it myself. We got to the Thanos moment, and I knew that no one was going to try something quite in the same way that I'm trying. So I wanted to make it happen. I wanted to take that out of my head, put it in the real world, and see what happens. See if other people would like it. Maybe this is just gonna serve as like a really big game design exercise, and I'll learn like a bunch of lessons, or whatever the result from this is. I know that I need to put this out there, or I'm literally gonna like shoot myself. Okay, that is a little... I'm being weird, okay? I'm not gonna shoot myself. Please don't report me to Twitch. But what I mean is, I would explode. Like, seriously, there's no way to hold it in. So, okay. That was a little bit of a personal history. That was a little bit of the Lineage history. Let's talk about the project, okay? So, what exactly was changed in Project Rebirth? Well, a lot has been changed. The goals for these changes were very simple. I just wanted to modernize the game, address a few problems with the game on a design level. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And I also wanted this to serve as a creative outlet, like something I can just create things and feel proud of something that I have done. Not just for me. I would love one day to have more people working on this with me, to have like a team, and for everybody to be able to say the same, you know? For somebody to show up and say, hey, I designed like a really cool combat, like a really cool boss, let's implement it. And then they see people playing that boss and maybe people love it. And then that person's, you know, they can feel proud of that accomplishment. So that was the goal. The goal was for the game to be changed a bunch. Now, when we use the game client and the server files as the foundation of this new game, there's a lot of things that we are taking advantage of. For once, all the assets are here. All the character models, animations, monsters, NPC models, locations, all the coding that goes into making all of this work in a video game sense. Everything is already done for us in that sense. And on the server side of thing, everything that is like really hard about an MMO is also done for us. So, what controls movement? which packets are being sent to the server, which ones are coming back, the structure to how you load quests, how you load NPC dialogue, like all of those things are already done. Which means that all of the changes that we're doing are taking advantage of everything that is already made before us. So this is not things that we built from zero. Sometimes I'm gonna be saying we instead of I, and that's just like streamer brain. Okay, it's interchangeable to me. This is good and this is bad in two ways. This is good because a small team can actually release something. Like me by myself, I can actually release something. Me with help, I can release something way better. But me by myself, I can already release something. And that is the best part. But of course, when you inherit the game client, when you inherit the server, you're also binding yourself to those limitations. So breaking those limitations, especially on the client side, oh boy. Good fucking luck. This is a topic that I really want to talk about, but not today. This is a topic that we should talk about like years in the future. If this project takes off, maybe we do a retrospective and we see what the limitations were and why we did what we did. Listen, I think we have one more slide where we'll talk a little bit about story, a historical context to Lineage, and then we'll get into specifics, okay? So just hold on a little. We're gonna get there. We're gonna be talking about specifics for the project very, very soon. So, you can already read what's on the screen. The original Lineage 2 has a lot of issues, but I want to preface all of this by saying these are the issues that I perceive. So these are the things that I think should be changed. If you don't think that those things are an issue, our opinions, they hold the same value, okay? If it works for you, I'm really happy for you. You have 1,000 options of private servers and official servers that will follow all of those things for you to have fun. I don't, so I kind of had to make my own, okay? That's just the preface that I want to go into all of this. Hopefully, you will see where I'm coming from, and you can agree that those things are a problem, but if you don't, that's okay. We'll handle it. We'll find something to do, okay? Now, the original Lineage 2 was released in 2003. 2003 is a very special year for Korea. Okay, that is kind of weird. Not a special year, it's a special period for Korea, where PC bungs or internet cafes or LAN houses, however you want to call them, they are extremely popular. This is right about the time where having a computer at home was starting to become cheaper, but it still wasn't. So a lot of people would only get to play those games like StarCraft, Counter-Strike, Lineage 1, Ragnarok Online. All of those games would only be playable for the majority of the South Korean population in those places. So Lineage is a game that was really, really popular during this period of time, which then makes Lineage 2's game design be focused on this reality. The reality that you would be playing these games with people around you, with people that the social aspect was there. This is not really the case for today, but this can explain why the moment-to-moment gameplay in Lineage was never really designed as something very high on the skill ceiling. Hopefully that gives you some context. Hold on, I need to drink something, holy shit. Alright. So, these are not all of the issues that once again, me personally, that I have with the original Lineage 2, but hopefully you can understand some of the things that I'm gonna say here. I'm gonna bring up 2 points together. The first one is that it was designed for this environment that we just talked about. And the second one is that the gameplay is very repetitive. Once again, Lineage games were fun, not in the moment that you were playing, but in the macro. Of course, the gameplay itself can also be fun, can also be rewarding, can also be interesting, but let's be honest, if you play Lineage 2, you know that there are a few combinations and a few roles that kind of just suck up their own thumbs and don't really do anything. They allow people to do things, but they don't really do things themselves. I'm looking at sword singers and blade dancers like a mage party, if they're not pulling mobs. Oh boy, that is an awful experience. If you know, you know. If you don't play Lineage, that's okay. Those things are not a problem in Project Rebirth, okay? Oh my god, the dwarves. So, let's talk about this for a little bit. Since Lineage was being designed in an environment for social interactions, since Lineage's draw, creme de la creme as we put it before, was the big macro scale things, the moment-to-moment gameplay could be very boring. This is why I have the picture of an archer here. If you play an archer, you know that using your skills is not only a waste of mana, it's also just awful. I'm talking about like old Lineage, okay? If you're playing Lineage 2 nowadays, you kind of just spam all your skills all the time, but that's a whole different can of worms. Lineage by game design, this is a problem in all Lineage games, not just Lineage 2. If a group of players reaches the top, if they are the best, the strongest, they are given the tools to stay at the top. So rather than the game allowing for catch-up mechanics where other people will be coming up and challenging them, it is way more common for the people at the top to monopolize all of those tools to themselves and just exponentially get more strong than everybody else. The problem with this is, well, you kind of kill your own player base. Your players, they kind of cannibalize each other. And I think this is a huge failure of game design. I think no healthy MMO can survive in a game that fosters this kind of thing. My voice is really failing me. Ugh. We can do it. We can do it. We can finish. We're like 30% of the way there. We can do it. Yeah, let's do it. So, the class design for Lineage 2 was also really diverse. I think we have 31 or 32 playable classes initially when the game comes out. And then very slowly the game adds like a few more, but they kind of knew that they had too many already. So effectively as the game develops, they try to curb those classes into smaller numbers to varying degrees of success and acceptance from the player base. Like, if you were around during Goddess of Destruction, I think you can remember how crazy people were about suddenly there's only 8 classes. Where's my class? Where's the thing that I like? I'm an elemental master. Where's my pony? All of those things, right? Something that I do want to say that I think is a big problem here is because of the diversity of classes, the roles were very strict in what each class could provide to a party. So, for example, every party would be much more effective in combat if they had a combination of a general buffer, a sword singer, and a blade dancer. No other class could kind of fill the roles that these 3 do. And because of that, sorry, because of that, those classes were not only essential for optimal gameplay, but they were also not really doing that much more. Like, you could buff someone if you're playing one of the 3 buffers and literally have nothing to do for 20 minutes. Like, you literally buff and you sit down and you just wait for the buffs to be fading to do them again. Of course, if you're worth your salt, you'll be playing actively, but it won't make that much of a difference. And I think this is one of the biggest problems with Lineage 2's original class design. We'll be talking a little bit more about this. Next thing. Because the game works like this, and you could, with the example that I just gave you, you could play a buffer, you could buff people, and then you wait 19-20 minutes to do something again. You had a very inactive role in combat while people are like clicking on mobs, moving around, picking up loot. Sometimes you kind of had to sit because your mana was like very low after buffing everybody, and you kind of had to just sit there for 7-8 minutes waiting for it to come back up. So this was a very strange game design decision. I think if you think of this as a PC bang environment where people were close to each other, sitting next to each other, someone goes to the bathroom, someone is like drinking something, the buffer could be like getting up from their chair, talking to people, things like that. That's why I like give so much credit to NCSoft, because I really think they designed a game for that environment that doesn't really exist anymore. But this leaves us today with a game design that is very inactive. So why would you, as a player who's trying to progress your character as effectively as possible, why would you rely on someone else buffing you to be able to, like, fight effectively when you could just have a buffer yourself that you all tab your game into every 20 minutes? You could just play your main character, play the buffer, do things on the buffer every 20 minutes, and just keep playing your main character. It's like not even that big of a hassle. You're not even multitasking that much. And because of that, you slowly start changing the demographics. Everybody who plays the game, everybody who stays at the game, they're all playing these DPS-like classes. They're all playing these strong and combat classes. And the people who used to play support classes are slowly kind of being driven out, because why would the guy party with you when the guy has like a bot that does everything you do? And when it's him and his bot, he doesn't have to share any of the loot or the rewards with you. So this is a problem of game design at its core. I don't think they really realize this. Once again, I think the PC ban culture really got to it. Somebody can explain to the new person what's going on here. So the PC ban culture really got to this, in my opinion. And Lineage also started off as a subscription game, so it actually had a financial incentive for people who are really dedicated to the game to be paying multiple subscriptions. So at that point, course correcting to stop this behavior was just not a decision that NCSoft made either in Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Philippines, Singapore, Western countries, Europe. None of those servers ever got some kind of action against multi-boxing. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, please chill, okay? The soundtrack for this game is beautiful. I just don't think it's used in a very good way. I'm gonna give you an original Lineage 1 example. When you play Lineage 1 and another player attacks you, you will listen to the PvP battle theme. Lineage 2 has no such thing. Even though it's a video game, the use of dynamic music is very limited. So I think the best way to think about it is Lineage 2 usually attach certain songs to either towns or jingles of town parts. When you're outside in the field, it's very possible that you're farming in a spot that doesn't have a music box. We can talk a little bit about what that is. So you would not listen to any song whatsoever for hours. Or you could be listening to really short jingles. Songs that last for like 20 to 30 seconds and they have like 40 seconds between them. So this is just not a very engaging use of the soundtrack to elevate the experience, right? If you play a game like Final Fantasy XIV, if you play a game like Final Fantasy XI that came out 2 years before Lineage 2, you kind of know that they have different ideas on how to use music. They use music in ways that they try to elevate or whatever is happening. If a boss attacks you in Final Fantasy XI, the music changes. You know, the game came out 2 years before Lineage 2. The bosses have their own themes in that game. The dungeons have their own themes in that game. When you enter combat in Final Fantasy XI, there's a battle theme. Lineage 1 had a PvP theme. So, for some reason, Lineage 2 has this beautifully composed. The samples that they used are also amazing. They made this really cool soundtrack, but the game doesn't really use it in a very interesting way. Once again, in my opinion. I could be wrong. In your opinion, if that's the case, I hope that you can at least see where I'm coming from. This, however, is a factual statement. The game can't really build a cohesive storyline. If you play Lineage 1, you know that Lineage 2 is supposed to be the myth era of that world. So Lineage 1 actually takes place so many years after Lineage 2 that some loose connections between a few characters is all that connects these games to one another. Lineage 2 is supposed to be the time of legends, you know? It would be like how we today think of like ancient Rome or old Greek civilization or whatever. So there's a distance there that lets those games be really different, but the games actually contradict one another very, very frequently. I'll give you just 2 examples that come up to my mind. First is the role of the Ivory Tower in Lineage 2 is an institute for magic learning. That is where Balef comes from. That is kinda where Harding studied. Both are characters in Lineage 1 as well. But in Lineage 1, the Ivory Tower is actually this containment to a very strong, like, dimensional pull. And when the Ivory Tower cracks in Lineage 1, it opens this massive demon portal kind of thing. So in Lineage 1, the Ivory Tower becomes this natural, also man-protected portal to other things. I don't think I'm a professor, but maybe. A much more clear example to grasp is the Tower of Insolence. In Lineage 2 lore, the one who built the Tower of Insolence was Emperor Biome, right? The Emperor of Elmoredon. In Lineage 1, the one to construct the tower was Evolutine, and Biome doesn't even fucking exist. They contradict themselves all the time. Within only Lineage 2, We have examples of, for example, during multiple updates, we have several Dark Elf characters like Elkadia, Shinken, and a few others. If you follow the Lineage 2 lore, you know who those characters are. They are all devout followers of Shilin. Goddess of Destruction happens, all of the Dark Elves, no exception, like pretty much all of them, I think all of them actually, like 100%. They all just say, oh, we were wrong. Shilin is too evil. We must fight her. Clearly, that was done so they wouldn't need to like do a huge overhaul, but it was such a cop-out. Like, ugh. Self-contradicting lore. A lore that doesn't really follow a structure. It doesn't really have a place at the end that it wants to get to. The things that are being set up early on, I think the only payoff we have in the Lineage 2 lore is Leona and Embryo. I think those are the only two big payoffs for Lineage 2 lore. So, yeah. I know I'm rambling a little, like a nerd. This is just something that the game doesn't really do in a really, like, thought out, methodical, professional manner. It just doesn't. They kind of wing it. Which, honestly, it's fine. It's okay if that's their approach, but I like lore. I like stories. So, I noticed. And I'm pretty sure other people noticed too. Now, the final flaw that I wanted to talk about the original Lineage 2 game design is animosity between players. So players are given so many weird incentives to hate each other. And nothing is there to like curb that, to stop that. Which leads into things like this very fucking weird headline. How could you live with yourself if you make a game and because of that game two people kill each other? Like, we know, as Lineage 2 players, we know that the relationship they had in the game was 100% instrumental in this death. Right? Because this game can really make you hate people. This game can really, really make you just get into this tribal mindset of my group fight your group, no human, unga bunga monkey. You know, it can really make that. This is dangerous to me on a community building perspective. This is dangerous to me on a longevity perspective. I think a game that really fosters this kind of environment is prone to losing people over time because toxicity just gets over people, you know? Like, how many Lineage 2 servers have you played where the Discord channels for the game have a flame chat where people just kind of hate on each other? And you know, maybe you're there ironically and having fun. Like, when I participated in flame chats, I was always like laughing and smiling. But you know, there's that weird person that takes everything there seriously. Always. So, I think the game could do a little bit better. No, the game can do a little bit better. I'm not going to embrace that. But yeah. So, with all of this project needed to change a lot of things. And as we change something, if you change a fundamental part of the game, everything else that interacts with that system also needs to be changed. That is like the biggest, scariest thing about touching systems in general. So for example, in Project Rebirth, we created new skills. We created new classes. All of the old classes that you know from Lineage 2, they're deleted. They literally don't exist in the game anymore. But because we created those new classes with different design ideas, for example, a global cooldown, different mana economy, a more reactive gameplay in mind, debuffs that just work. They don't go through any kind of resistance, because all of those things are changes that happen at the class design and gameplay level. Everything else has to change, right? Because if we suddenly put these new classes to fight the old content in the game, the old monsters, it's just not gonna be the same. Those monsters were made to be auto-attacked to death by an archer with like double clicks, not for you to do your 6-button rotation, stun, move away, dodge a cleave, or anything like that. So, with the combat changes, the PvE content in the game needs to be reimagined. Now you need monsters that will absolutely wreck your shit by using like a tank buster like skill, a skill that deals a lot of damage. So what can you do? Well, you have to stun that. You have to play more reactively. You have to see, wait, the monster is raising his sword with both hands. I know that when he does this, he's going to cleave his front. So we need to get behind the monster not to lose like 40% of our health. So all of those things start coming together with a new system for classes. But when the PvE content is reimagined and the classes are reimagined, well, progression also needs to change. How much experience does it take from one level to another? How can I even say this? Let me think a little. So the amount of experience changes. The levels themselves are changing, because now that you have new classes and you're designing those classes from zero, you could follow the old design, but if you did it, you would be trying to design a game very similar to what happened before, and you would kind of make the mistake of designing too much before you could actually do anything. For example, if I were to release Project Rebirth with changes that only impact classes, okay? I would need to design a class that goes all the way from level 1 to, I think the client level is 130. So I would need to go from level 1 to level 130 with like actual meaningful steps in that progression. And then the world would need to sustain a character leveling from level 1 to 130. So, in my opinion, my method for doing this was just throw it all out, do everything from zero. Create new XP tables, new XP curves, new items. Everything gets remade from zero. That way, we can construct like a really strong foundation and slowly build the game up. We release the game with, let's say, level 1 to 5, and that's all. That's all. You can only get to level 5 when it comes out. A few months later, levels 5 to 10 come out and a new tier of equipment, and we slowly build the game while testing all of the systems, instead of building systems or classes that are designed for like a really big thing, like level 1 to 130. That will be insane. I think I'm rambling, but hopefully some of that got across. Because I actually like the lore of these games, I also wanted the lore to be an aspect in the game. So how can we connect this disconnect that exists, for example, in the Tower of Insolence storyline, where one game says it's Emperor Volutine, the other game says it's Emperor Biome? How can we mix those two things together? I think my solution, let me actually just do this real quick. Hold on. Can we open this? Alright. So So for an example, this item description, let me just paste this right here. This item description fixes that discrepancy. We now have a reason for the person being Biome and Evoluting actually being the same person, connecting Lineage 1 to Lineage 2. That is more or less the general vibe that those things are working on. I don't know how else to say it. It's like a connecting tissue. Hold on, I need a moment. My ADHD is flaring. We can talk about Throne and Liberty after the stream. Alright. So, the song that you have been listening to all this time is actually from Lineage W, which is a remake of Lineage 1's Talking Isle theme. So this is like one of the very first songs that everybody listens to when they play the original Lineage. By connecting the lore, by connecting the music, we're able to do something called having leitmotifs. A leitmotif is when a certain melody, a certain harmony, a certain musical piece, usually short, indicates an association to a character, to a place, to an event. And through repetition and through association, we can create the idea of a character having that song to represent them. We can create the idea of, how can I say this? A place having a song that represents it. Now, Lineage 2 already does this with towns. Another example of something that does this would be like Star Wars and the Empire, right? Every time you see the Empire, they usually come with their own weird theme, that dun 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 dun, right? So that's the use of a leitmotif, for example. Yeah. With all of these changes made to the project, it starts to gain its own identity. It starts to become a whole thing rather than a bunch of isolated changes or minor changes to one system or another. When all of those things are together, I truly think they transformed this into a different game. And now all of those systems are being introduced. They're trying to fix those things that I'm talking about here. There's not a single one of those systems that is not trying to address one of those issues. So that's more or less how the project is moving forward, how the project was designed. An analogy that I'm using a little bit throughout these slides is the analogy of a person. So if you have, this is gonna be a little gruesome, I'm sorry, but if you have a person and you rip out their skin, you have the skeleton under it, right? That gives form to that skin. It gives like shape to that skin. The skeleton is the original client for Lineage, the server files made by the community, by developers, or even leaked by people who had the means to do so. While the skin that we put on top of the skeleton, that is all of the systems that we're talking about in this document, everything that changes. So the foundations are based on the skeleton of the work that came before it. but then how it presents itself to people, how you see it, how you interact with it. Those things are all on the skin, on the surface level of the interaction. So that is just how I kind of see this whole thing. Another way to look at this, maybe this is a little bit too pretentious. If it is, I'm sorry. But it's more like, I think of this like you would think of Counter-Strike and Half-Life. Or how you would think of Warcraft 3 and Dota. Right? Those are games that are running in those games, right? Counter-Strike is running on Half-Life. Dota is running on Warcraft 3. But those games are trying to do something different. And by trying to do something different, you don't really think of them as the same game. If that makes any sense. So, with all of those changes implemented, we then go into the first playtest. That is going to be happening next week, I think. I am the 2nd of February. Yeah, I think it's on the 2nd of February. I might be wrong, but I think it's on the 2nd. It's in the Discord. Okay? So, getting to the point where those changes can be implemented means doing a lot of this. Having a lot of documents and a lot of design ideas that are actually written down and then implemented into the client and into the server. If you don't think about what you're going to be doing before you start doing it, you're kind of insane. And I'm not that insane. But even then, I made mistakes. For example, if you see here at the bottom, these are all the original classes for Lineage 2. The very first version of this project that I had included all of these classes. This is insane. The amount of work here was way too much. And even though I implemented them on the client and on the server, I was really dumb and just let feature creep just wreck me. Because there was no way I could build a cohesive game in a short period of time with that many playable classes. It's just not possible. It's just really not possible. So now, the current version of Project Rebirth has 7 playable classes. So we go down from 32 to 7. And before, those 32 classes would go from level 1 to 30. Now, on the first playtest, those 7 classes go from 1 to 10. So you can see how the scope is like getting smaller to be able to make this manageable. Because if we have a problem with any of these systems at a systematic level, we need to remake everything. So we can't really commit to something like 30 levels for 32 classes. That is insane. So, even before releasing any of this, I would like to say that I already learned a bunch. A bunch. But okay. So, Lineage 2, with its limitations, because we are using the game client, because we are using emulated versions of the server files, can it be made fun to play? We already know that the game comes from this PC Bang environment, that the design could be very repetitive, the class diversity could lead to people not really having much to do, but can we do something about it? Let's get on specifics. So, the first goal of the project was this, gameplay. The game had to be fun. This is the top one priority. If the game is not fun, nothing that comes after is worth it. So the game needs to be fun to be played. Now, how can we do that? First, we introduce rotations. Rotations are skill rotations is what I'm referring to. I personally took this idea from Ion. That's the first MMO that I saw, that I played with like actual combos and skill rotations. So if you do your first skill, your second skill, and your third skill in that order, they are stronger. Or maybe they can only be executed in 1, 2, 3 in that order. So this is what a skill rotation is. You're suddenly changing the gameplay from a single button press over and over and over again to something that has more player agency, because sometimes a skill rotation is a branch, right? You do like 1, 2, then you have 3 that can be 1 or 2 skills, then you have 4 that could be like 3 different skills, and you pick one, which one you want from, you know, whatever situation you're dealing with. So yeah, this affects the game flow, the flow of gameplay, right? This affects how skill-based the game actually is, because now you're not just pressing the same button over and over again. You're trying to follow a certain order to play optimally, to play effectively. And this also creates reactive gameplay by using the branch example where the fourth skill can be different. Are you using the fourth skill in a way that stuns someone because you're fighting someone that it's more advantageous for you to stun them than to let them keep dealing damage to you? Are you just trying to kind of save your healer? That's why you choose to stun or to use a silence as the fourth skill, and so on. Hopefully this makes sense. This was the very first pillar that we needed to test, and we needed it to be there. I have no idea why you mean you're gonna be annoyed by this. This is a very good change. I love this change, okay? I haven't played Project Rebirth for a month. I'm liking it a bunch, but I'm biased, so... The second change was a global cooldown system, okay? This idea is coming from World of Warcraft. A global cooldown system is when you use one skill, several other of your skills will also go into cooldown. Funny enough, Lineage 1 has a global cooldown system. So this is something that they moved away for Lineage 2 and that I'm bringing back. I'm bringing back for 3 reasons. First, it's game balance. It's way easier for me to be able to know exactly how many skills a player is able to cast during a set period of time, for balancing reasons, for predicting combat, for designing bosses and things like that. I know that, like, okay, 1 minute into this fight, only 4 people can fight this boss at once, like at the same time. I know that they will have cast, each one of them will have cast 50 skills, for example. This is just an example. And then you can balance the bosses like HP, defense, attack with those numbers in mind. It's almost like you have a turn-based game that you can try outside the game itself, which is perfect for game design. You want to be able to sit down at a table with like some card box things and try out the ideas before you put a lot of effort into making them digital, into putting them into the game. So that is, we can have a debate about this. It's okay, but at the end, this is not a democracy right now. Right now, this is presentation. We'll open up the floor at the end. But yeah, this is why the global cooldown system was implemented into the game. Now, something else, a skill replacement system. For example, if you are playing a healer that needs to switch from healing to dealing damage, that is an actual gameplay example from Project Rebirth. Wouldn't it be really cool for your healing spells and your damage spells to actually be the same spells, but you switching sides, you switching stances is what changes them? So this helps us with something called hotbar management, which is instead of, let's say there's 3 heals and 3 attack skills. Instead of us using 6 slots in a hotbar, we're now actually only using 4 3 for the heals and damage spells, and 1 to switch between them, right? So 3 heals and 1 button to switch to DPS mode. I press that button, my heals become DPS buttons. So hopefully you're like, wow, I understand that. And this is also what I call conditional gameplay. If you're playing a healer in DPS mode, your healing kit is inaccessible. So you are putting that condition on yourself. I think this is maybe the way that it's implemented right now will prove in the playtest to not be the best for people. But just having the option to be able to do this is wonderful. And I think it's really healthy for a game that is aiming to grow over time to not really bloat people with way too many buttons to press. So for all of those reasons, skill replacement system also introduced. Does Inquisitor do that? I think Inquisitor still needs you to like put 2 different skills in the hotbar, doesn't it? Yeah, because when you activate Inquisitor, the difference is that your skills change. So if you press your heal button, nothing really happens. So Inquisitor does do the conditional gameplay, but it doesn't do the hotbar management part. Let me see if I can like, well, you see, we have a gift for this in just a little bit. We'll get there. Next thing is debuff and debuff immunity. So in the original Lineage 2, when you try to apply a debuff to a target, depending on the debuff, a different check is going to happen. But pretty much almost no debuff has a 100% chance to land. There's always a chance that this skill that might be a really long cast time, might be like a really long cooldown. This thing that you just tried to do didn't really work because the target resisted it because of level difference, because of a stat resistance in case of like men and some mental debuffs, or because they had a special buff that increases their chance, like what is mental shield with like sleep, hold, all those things, right? So because of so many conditions, debuffing people actually becomes this check that might not happen when you do it. So when I was playing Lineage 2 as a debuffer, I was just like, this is the worst. I hate it. So, in Project Rebirth, there's a system implemented that works with a weird gray system. I think that's the best way that I can describe it. Let me kind of describe how the whole system works. So when you stun somebody, for example, this happens when you do any sort of debuff, okay? But when you stun somebody in Project Rebirth, that stun will always land. You can be level 1 and the person you're trying to stun is level 130. Doesn't matter. That is still going to land. You press the stun, you finish casting, that person is getting stunned. Now, you can ask me, Maya, that is going to be highly abusable. And I'm like, yes it is. So we need to kind of balance that out. So, in exchange for making debuffs just work when you press the button, if you press stun, you're going to stun your target as long as you finish your cast. But once your stun fades from your target, they are going to be immune to twice the duration of your stun. And this duration is changeable, right? So if gameplay test shows that twice is not long enough, we can make it 3 times, we can make it 4 times, we can make it like an arbitrary number. But this pretty much guarantees a much more, in my opinion, tactical gameplay, where you're just not trying to land that one goddamn vortex that will never ever work. You just press your button and just be happy. Just know that it's going to work. This, of course, comes with a few caveats. There are skills in the game that will prevent certain debuffs for a certain amount of time. I think warriors in the game, they have Lionheart, you know, the old Lionheart skill. It looks the same, but it works differently. In that if you're stunned, rooted, slapped, or anything, you can just press Lionheart and you wake up from the stun, you wake up from the root, and you become immune for like 10 seconds or something. So there's a little play there. There's a few conditions that can make you immune to debuffs, but this is the general gist of how the debuff system works. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm not... Did that make sense? Do I need to explain this again? That made sense, right? That made sense. That made sense. So, all of those things are proposed changes before they are actually implemented, okay? Once they are implemented and I could play with them, the result, success. The game was now much more reactive. The game was now, I was more engaged playing Lineage after years of playing this game with half my brain outside my skull. Like, I think me and Akko, we have like a meme about how Ancient Battlegrounds is the most like brain dead thing. So, yeah. Ancient Battlegrounds is not gonna be brain dead in Project Rebirth. I can promise you that. Let me show you this in action. As you can see, the skills are going to cool down together. This is a shared global cooldown system. And once the human fighter uses Vanguard, not only their shield is going away because they're using this one-handed sword with both hands, but also the skills on F1, F2, and F3 are changing without you needing to assign them to, let's say, F5, F6, or F7. So, yeah, this is like kind of all of the systems put together and actually working. I'm really happy about it. Yeah. So that is the part of the game when it comes to gameplay. If this part couldn't be done, the project wouldn't exist. So before, let me actually pull this up. So before, okay. So before any of this could be made, like any of the other classes, any of the things here that I think are like extremely essential to the project, this needed to be the bare minimum. So those classes are designed only after we have a proof of concept that this works, that these changes are possible, that the game can be changed in this way. So the whole development process of Project Rebirth is always theorize, implement, test, expand. Always, always. We always start with the idea. We go into an implementation of a prototype of that idea. We test and make sure it actually works the way that we want it to. If it doesn't, we change it in a way that still feels like it achieves the same goal. And eventually, we got to the point where, okay, we know this works, now we can do the other things that are related to this. So the game starts with the development of this first class, the Knight, the one that you saw in the GIF. And after a few, I think after a few weeks, I think night took like 3 to 4 weeks. I was like, okay, this works. Let's do the other ones. And then, yeah. Rather than, doing the risky development process of you do all the classes together at the same time, that would be a little crazy. Yeah. Yes, that is a good question. Thank you for asking. There are also skills that are outside a global cooldown. Very similar to Final Fantasy XIV. Usually, rotational skills are part of the global cooldown, while longer cooldowns like 10, 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes are usually OGCDs. Yeah. Now, this part is a little bit controversial. And it's controversial because we don't really know if this works until the playtest happens. So I'm going to spoil this a little by coming here saying the result is I don't know. I don't know if those changes are going to work in the way that I'm thinking about them and in the way that I'll be talking about them. I am being confident like the left picture here, but at the end of the playtest I want to be the right picture here and full of feedback from people to actually be able to judge and think, this worked, this didn't work, we need to change this, or we need to scrap it altogether. That needs player input. That is not something I can decide by myself, and that's one of the very points of the first playtest that we're gonna have next week. So let's go back a little. So with the way that the game is played really changing, everything else related to the game also needs to change. We had a slide that kind of explained how one change leads into another. This one will be fully about progression. Now, what do I mean when I say progression? I mean your character progression in terms of experience, in terms of equipment, in terms of skills acquisition, in terms of how your character grows in this role-playing game. Lineage 2 is an RPG. RPGs have... This is like a staple of the genre of having your character grow more powerful. The only game that kind of doesn't do this is Final Fantasy, and I think Final Fantasy is really dumb. Because this is really addictive, feels really cool. And, it's always nice. My opinion, again, okay? You can disagree with me if you want, but personally, I really like to see a number getting higher. I really like to fight an enemy that was like really difficult for me to like farm in a certain spot, and then later I can go there, I can farm there much more easily. Like that kind of progression is really rewarding. It's like you feel like you're moving up, it's cool. I like it. So, with that being said, we need to talk a little bit about level caps, okay? That is the very first, big change to progression. I wanted Project Rebirth to be something that people could play for a bit. They can get to max level on the classes that they want to play, and they can stop there. They don't need to keep leveling. We're gonna explain that phrase in a little bit. But I wanted people, to really be able to play the game to do the things that they want to do in the game. So, for example, if you are a player and all you want to do is participate in, clan intrigue and clan fights, and you want to go to sieges, all you have to do, essentially, is get your character to level 20, farm and unlock your skills, get decent, unique tier equipment. That is the third tier of equipments. It's not that hard to get, and you're pretty much set. Even though in the sieges you might be finding people who are like higher level than the cap, and we're gonna be talking about that in a little bit. Your battle effectiveness is going to be very close to that person. So once you hit the level cap, everything else that comes after that is very, very, very minimal. It is a weird thing. We're gonna talk about that, but that is why we have the inverse relationship graph here. Dude, I'm losing my voice. Jesus Christ. If you didn't know, I had like vocal issues for the longest time ever. Still do. So this is a little straining to me. Kinda. In Guild Wars 2 World versus World, you don't actually have character progression from 0, right? If you go into World versus World as a level 1 character, you're stat boosted to the base character power. You're given skills to the base character power, right? Or no, I don't think you're given skills actually. I think you only have your skills, right? It's structured PvP. Yeah, it's structured PvP that gives you all the skills. Yeah, but you're still boosted. So here, that's not the case. You kind of still need to... You still need to grind to get to level 20 to then be on the same playing field as other people. But yeah, I think it's, now that you say it, it's similar to Guild Wars 2. I didn't think of that. But yeah, so the idea for Project Rebirth in terms of levels is very simple. You go from level 1 to 20. That is the real progression. I want you to think of these levels like we did from 85 to 99 on Goddess of Destruction, okay? Those levels are going to be slow. You're not going to be level 10 in one day. You're not going to be level 20 like 1 week. It's going to take a while. But once you're there, you're safe. It's not a really long journey either. We're not talking about like multiple months. Maybe 1 or 2. But not really more than that to get to level 20. And we're definitely not talking about years. I'm staring at Lineage W right now, which I think it's a game that I leveled up 3 times last year, outside of a few events. So we're not going the full crazy Lineage W like route, the full crazy progression route of Lineage, but there's still going to be grinding, there's still going to be progression, and so on. Now, once you hit level 20, you can keep going. In fact, you can keep going all the way to 130. However, all of those extra levels are minimal in terms of power granted to your character. So because of those extra levels, you're not going to be getting new skills. You're barely going to be increasing like your maximum HP and your base stats. So those levels truly are similar to the prestige system from Diablo 3, if you guys are familiar with that game, where you just kept leveling up, like the leveling never really stopped. If you like leveling in Project Rebirth, you can just keep leveling forever, and you're going to be rewarded for it, but it's not going to be a very significant big reward starting from level 20 onwards. Exactly, the Paragon levels. Here I call them in quotes, right, prestige levels. That is exactly where this idea comes from. It's Diablo 3, I think Reaper of Souls, and they introduced the Paragon levels. This is exactly where the idea comes from. Not even going to pretend this is like an original idea. Dude, my voice is just dead. So, with all of this in mind, the XP table, the XP acquisition, meaning the XP you get from monsters, and the XP curve, meaning the amount of XP that you need to level up, like all of those things are redesigned from 0. I guess XP table and XP curve are kind of the same thing, but yeah. This is done alongside the first change to progression in a weird way to give people freedom, right? Once again, if I bring back the example of, let's say you have this person that they only like to do sieges, they want to be there fighting with their clan leaders, they want to be involved, but they don't really have a lot of time to play, they can only really play on weekends. So perfect, they're like a sieger, let's call them that. This person, the game is being designed in a way that they can comfortably get to level 20, gear themselves up, and be there on the days that this happens. And that's it. I'm not going to be forcing them to be having like, oh, you have to spend all your daily dungeon time. You have to do all your dailies. You have to do all your weeklies. You have to farm really hard to get this weapon that's like 5 times better than yours. None of that is the idea. Ugh. Dude, I'm kinda losing my voice. I do not recognize that language. I have no idea what that means. But okay. To support this progression system on the XP curve, there's an inverse relationship for equipment power, meaning the easiest it is to get an equipment, the strongest it is in relation to what came before it. So the very first pieces of equipment that you have, they would be here. Once again, I hope you guys can see my cursor. If you can see my cursor, tell me. But they would be here like at the top of the Y, right? If the Y is like equipment power and the X is like efforts to get the equipment. So in relation to the equipment that came before, this is not like absolute, like this one is stronger than this. It's just this one is way stronger than everything that came before it. And this one is a little bit stronger, and this one is barely stronger. So the idea by designing a game like this is that the dedicated players will always have progression systems to go through that will significantly impact how they play, but it is not going to make them this unkillable monster that no one else can touch. So we're trying to create an environment where people can kind of chill, take a break, play other games, go on a vacation with your family. The game is gonna be here because you didn't log into the game for a few months. Don't worry, you didn't lose a lot of things. Okay, you didn't lose a lot of. You can only get this if you play during this period of time. Like, none of that bullshit is here. We want to create a healthy community for the game. We want to create a community of people who want to have this as their game, a game that they have input on, and we'll be talking a little bit about that and community building a little bit later. Dude, I need to get up and drink some water. I'm gonna be right back. Yeah, it's almost 2 hours. Can you imagine me being able to speak for 2 hours like a few years ago? Wow. But yeah, I think I'm feeling a little better, throat wise. Let's go. Let's continue. Let's move this in a way that we can finish things, yeah? Let's get there, gamers. So, this inverse relationship with equipment power is just a way to try to make it so not only we don't need to do catch-up events in the future, because the game is being designed in a way that kind of funnels people into harder and harder to surpass, like, let's say, stopping points in power level. It is also, I think, a more welcoming game when you realize that you can join the game and you're not really all that far behind from everybody else who has been playing it for years. I could tell you guys a billion different personal stories from playing all these different Lineage games and how heartbroken I was when I saw how big of a difference I had as someone who was playing these games daily against someone who has been playing since the game came out. It's insane. But yeah, when this point is a little bit strange, but I still wanted to talk about it here. When deciding on equipment the players can wear, equipment that players can use, I put a really big emphasis on things that look completely different. If you're familiar with Lineage 2, you know that certain items will have repeated textures and appearances from other items on certain conditions. For example, the Orc Mystics, if they try to equip, I think it's the Mithril leather set, you know, the C grade light armor gives you 4 strength, -1 con, that busted ass armor set. If you equip that on an Orc Mystic, yeah, oops, it's all Carnian. So that is one of the choices, one of the problems that we were encountering when first developing this project and first deciding on, okay, which items should be there and which items shouldn't be there. So we picked items that have a unique appearance on all of the playable races, except for Cameo and Orphea. Cameos and Orpheas, they lack so many meshes and textures for the old equipments in like a unique way that I really couldn't take them into consideration when doing this. So for now, in the very first playtest for Project Rebirth, Cameo and Orphea are not selectable, and every single equipment, weapons, armors, and accessories, everything that you can find will have a unique look depending on which body type you pick for your character. Okay, that's just something that I think it's important. I think it's cool to play a game where you can look very different, choose how you want to look, and so on. And we'll talk a little bit more about this point in a little bit as well. Now, with all of this in mind, of course, the economy also needed to be designed from zero. So, how much time does a player usually spend killing a monster? What drops from that monster are converted into what amount of money? That amount of money, how much of it is needed for supplies that sustain that kind that hunting, right? That player hunting those monsters in the first place. So all of those thoughts were constantly in my head, and we took some drastic decisions relating to like basic economy things and lineage too. Let me drink some water. For example, if you play Lineage 2, you know that every monster you defeat will grant you Adina, that is the in-game currency. In Project Rebirth, this is not true. Most monsters that you're going to be fighting do not give you Adina. That is already... Chill, okay? Chill. Relax a little. Soul shots and spirit shots, also something that very much help control inflation in the original game. They are also not present in Lineage 2, or in Project Rebirth, sorry. So all of those changes really mean a different kind of economy and a different kind of progression in terms of currency acquisition and what that currency can buy you. So we'll see how many of those changes are actually working as intended. But generally speaking, this will be very similar to Final Fantasy XI, where you'll be killing, let's say, bats, and you get bat wings, and then you go to the town, and you're able to exchange a certain amount of bat wings for a certain amount of money. Or you're fighting humanoid enemies, like Gratian soldiers. If you go to, I think, Lank Lizardman Dwellings, the beach side, there's a few soldiers from Gracia there. If you fight them, they will actually drop money because, you know, they're people. But that is almost like a flavor thing. It's not really supposed to be a really strong game design decision of, yes, we definitely need a type of monster that drops money. Yes, we definitely need a type of monster that drops bat wings. This is trying to alternate a little bit of how the economy works for Lineage 2, to the point that players will be interacting with NPCs for trades a lot more, and we can make part of those trades the usual sinks of currency that are present in Soul Shot, Scroll of Escapes, or teleporting. All of those things are not really available in Project Rebirth. So hopefully that makes some sense. If it's confusing, I'll just say wait to play it. That is the best way that I can tease this. Let's go. We need to finish this. The results, once again, we're back to this line. I don't know. It's impossible to know how these changes will actually mess up things or work even better than expected. We can't really know until we are in a live test environment and there's direct feedback from people. Now, we talked a little bit about this before, and Lineage 2 is a game that can foster a really weird type of cannibalism within the player base. The player base will kind of spook each other off their own game, and the game like grows smaller and smaller and smaller over time. So in order to try to combat a little bit of this, some changes have been made to the game, and I hope that, you know, you guys can see where I'm coming from again. The first one is the difficulty of PvE content in general. You're always going to be able to play by yourself in Project Rebirth, but playing by yourself in Project Rebirth isn't really going to be that rewarding. So you should be looking at other people and you should be talking to them to try to play together. Go to like different places that are more difficult to be able to fight off alone. That is like basic old MMO stuff, right? But the changes that are happening here, in terms of the difficulty of the content, are a lot more ingrained with how the gameplay was changed. So because of monsters that can deal like a high amount of damage, you need somebody that can interrupt that. Because of monsters that can make you bleed for like a really high amount of health, you need a healer that's able to cleanse that. Because of, I don't know, a monster that can put everyone to sleep, you really need a warrior that can like wake up from the sleep and wake everybody else up. Otherwise, the monster will just pick everyone off one by one. These are just some of the examples of a few of the very simple design encounters that are already present in the game. But playing with other people will net you proper proportional rewards. One thing that is a bit important for me to say is that when you're playing this game with others and you're doing, for example, a quest together, and the monster that you just killed drops an item that you both need, once that item is picked up by a party member, all party members will be rewarded the item. This just expands beyond just quest things in general, but you can really just play this game with other people without feeling like, oh no, I have to share all my rewards. Oh no, my XP is much worse now. Oh no. Literally, I think in this first playtest, we're trying to test out having proportional experience gains to number of party members. So this is a bit of a spoiler, but party sizes only go up to 4 people in Project Rebirth. And I'm pretty sure that right now, if you play with 2 people in a party, you will both get double experience, but then it gets cut in half because there's 2. So you're getting the same amount of experience that you would be getting if you're playing alone, but you're killing things much, much faster. Like, way faster. So that is a design idea as well. Like, you should always think that playing this game with others will lead into a more efficient and a more fun gameplay experience. So that is the first one. The second one is clan-wide missions. What I mean by clan-wide missions is when you join a clan that is a guild in Lineage, or a blood pledge in Lineage 1, if you join one of those groups, you are then given access to a part of the game that has a weekly reset. So every week, you can complete, I think it's 16 clan missions every week. Sorry. So yeah, I think you can complete something like 16 missions every week. And those missions are difficult to be completed alone, but when you finish them, not only are you as an individual getting like personal experience for your character, tokens that you can exchange for useful items, you're getting like a bunch of very useful, good stuff. The clan is also getting part of your... It's not getting part of your reward. It's like when you finish the mission, the clan is also rewarded. So it's not like it's eating away some of your rewards. So what I'm trying to do with this is to have an incentive in the game for clan people to be like, hey, have you finished your weeklies? Do you need help with your weeklies? You know, I want people to be proactive into helping each other finish that. Now, if that's going to happen with the way that the system is implemented, I have no idea. But we'll try. Okay? We'll give it a shot. And if it works, great. We'll be very happy. So yeah. Now, this is what we talked about in the progression part of the video, but I don't think we kind of need to talk about this again. It's just reiterating that we really want the game to be able to have the most meaningful parts of progression to happen early. So you can play the game, get to the point where you can kind of just stop at your own pace. You can get there in, let's say, 2 months. You can get there in a month. You can get there in a few weeks if you're really hardcore. And then you don't really feel the need to really keep playing every single day, to log in every single day, to do activities every single day, to do your weekly quotas. Of course, if you're a dedicated Lineage player and you like this whole game, this whole idea, and you're having fun, and this suddenly becomes the game that you play, you are going to be logging in every day. At least I would. Like, when I really get into a game, I want to play that game every day. So that is still going to be happening, but I don't want people to feel like they need for this to happen, that they need to put that much effort, that much time. I know that a lot of Lineage players are their parents nowadays, their moms, their dads, so they don't really have the same amount of time they had before. People are focusing on their careers. They really don't have the same amount of time they had before. So this is kind of the same argument that sustains like essence versions of the game and automatic hunting, but that is not a thing here, okay? Sorry to burst your bubble, there's no auto hunt whatsoever. The results of these changes, once again, we come back to the amazing slide. I don't know. We need a live test environment to be able to say if those things are actually working as intended. Here I'm giving you my intentions. I'm explaining to you why those changes are being made. And hopefully when the playtest happens next week, we know which ones of these actually worked and which ones didn't. The ones that didn't, we need to revisit, we need to change them, we need to maybe delete them altogether. That is fine. That is part of the development process of any healthy game, honestly. Now, I think this is the last part. We're almost done. Jesus, I'm tired. I'm tired. My throat is like killing me. Jesus. Freedom. Don't feel forced to stay here, Lene. You can go. So, the original Lineage 2 has, like we talked about, a really cool soundtrack, but the game doesn't really use it in really interesting ways. I don't want to reiterate myself here, but it's, you know, it's the classic example of Lineage 1, you had a PvP theme when somebody attacked you, or when you attacked someone, you actually had two different ones. Lineage 2, there's no such a thing. So the game barely uses music in a dynamic way, in a way that like accommodates or elevates whatever the player is doing. So we have added new songs to the game. Those songs come from the whole Lineage franchise. So Lineage 1, Lineage W, Lineage 2M, Lineage Remastered. The song that you're listening to right now, once again, that's Talking Isle music from Lineage 1. So all of those things are being added to the game, but they're not just, oh, yeah, every single song that was being used in Lineage 2 is being used in the same way. And before I continue a little bit on this point, I just want to say every other point that came before this is way more important than this. So the priority here is lore, setting, and music is way low. Way low. This is like bottom level. I love these things, and if you know me personally, you know that I really love these things. But the gameplay, progression, fostering a healthy community, all of those things are way more important than this. The project could exist without this, but it couldn't exist without the other things. So this is a very low priority thing. So I just want to say that. Don't think that this has the same priority as the others. So with all of that said, the old songs that Lineage 2 has in its files, the old songs that Lineage 2 uses, they are not being used in the same way anymore. You might go somewhere and it might have a new theme song, and there will be a reason for each song changing. For example, I'm going to get like my head on a spike right now. Let me pause this. For example, if you listen to this song, this song is the original theme for Gluten, and this is the theme that will play in the town of Gluten when you play Project Rebirth. I'm sorry, if you love the Gluten theme, I am sorry, okay? If you love the Lineage 2 Gluten theme, I am so sorry. But we're changing this, and I promise you those changes are not completely arbitrary, okay? The reason we're doing this is because in Lineage W, they remade the song in this manner. This is now the Lineage W version. I'm going to skip a little ahead so you can listen to the same melody. So by having multiple different themes that have the same melody and very similar harmony too, if we're being very technical, there we go, there's no H there. If we're being very technical, they also have a very similar harmony. The idea for this is we'll get this melody to represent gluten, and then when you're outside in the field of gluten and you're listening to a song that also has that melody, suddenly you're like, oh yeah, I'm in gluten. That's why I'm listening to the gluten theme. I'm sure if you guys are veteran Lineage 2 players, you know that there's a fucking weird spot in Dion and Gludio where you're just like walking around the field and out of nowhere you listen to Goddard's like theme. It just plays there in the middle of nowhere and you're like, why? So we're trying to give the game a stronger musical identity for two reasons, okay? This is not just change for change's sake. First, I think we can elevate game experiences through music, okay? We can agree or we can disagree on this, but this is not really something that I'm willing to ever let go. Like, this is a hill I'll die on. I think game music definitely elevates situations. So when you start doing those associations, when you start doing leitmotifs to places, to characters, to story events, you create an association with players that they might get emotionally attached to a scene when a character is dying and the song that's associated with that character is being played at a minor key, at a slower tempo, at something that's brings out the sadness in the human brain. For some reason we have this bug right in our brain where like minor slow pieces are usually like sad. So yeah, that is one of the reasons I think it can be used to elevate gameplay, but I also think to a veteran Lineage 2 player, when they play Project Rebirth for the first time and they're able to see and listen, whoa, why does this sound so different? Why does this item that I have has a description talking about the story of gluten? What the hell? Why does my helmet talk about the Order of Water Shadow? Isn't Water Shadow a sword? Oh yeah, now I have the Sword of Water Shadow. Oh, this is related to gluten? Or to Gludio? What the hell? like when you start to put like all these different tidbits of lore, tidbits of information, different music, I think you much more easily you have a okay, I'm playing something different for the veteran lineage 2 player. Because I know some people are going to try the project and they're gonna be like, this isn't lineage 2 and I'm going to lose my mind. It was never meant to be. And I think this change in music, this change in lore will hopefully get the point across to a large number of people. Okay? Maybe it won't. Maybe I'll just be crazy. But we'll see. Next week. We'll see. Now, gamers. We talked a little bit about this before. Lore is written. It is completely like original content. We are paying homage to the old lineage games, but right now I am the writer. There's no one else working with me who's doing like any little bit of writing. If you know a writer who really wants to work on something together, please send them my way. I need help. But yeah, so the game almost serves as like this connecting tissue where we get a character from Lineage 1, we make a connection to them in Lineage 2, and we keep going like back and forth, we keep fixing the mistakes that they made in continuity. We set up stories that we want to be paid off in the future. It's exciting stuff, but like I said, all of this is very minor, all of this is very... If the gameplay is not fun, if the community is super toxic, if the progression systems suck, none of this matters. So this is very low priority, but this is the dearest low priority that could there ever be. The dearest one to my heart. I love this stuff. I don't know if those changes will actually be good. I hope they will be. If they aren't, I hope to be exactly like this picture, full of personal user information, just full of feedback from everyone to be like, okay, I understand my darling needs to die. And I will snuff out the life from things myself, if need be. And finally, to finish all of this, the dwarves have a lot going on for them. They really do have a lot going on for them. So, yeah. Play the game. Play the game. Join the Discord. Somebody post the Discord link. Join the Discord and read what the dwarves are doing, because the dwarves are fucking awesome. But yeah. Gamers. A few things that I wanted to talk about before we finish this that I couldn't really finish putting in. I couldn't really find the correct spot or the correct timing to put it in the previous parts of this conversation. The first one is I really want Project Rebirth to give player freedom over player restrictions. For example, one of the biggest changes that we have made... One of the biggest changes that we have made in Project Rebirth is that your starting class doesn't really mean anything. I want you to pick your starting character, your starting class, based on what you want to look like. If you want to be a dark elf, just pick a dark elf, then go and subclass into the class you want to play. There's never going to be any sort of like major difference that says this is your main class, this is your subclass. Those things are not in the game anymore. You can learn every single class in one character. Okay? You can level them up individually, very similar to Final Fantasy XI, very similar to Final Fantasy XIII, very similar to Lineage 2 private servers that let you level all subclasses like without any limits whatsoever. Okay? So when you play on Project Rebirth, please pick the character you want to look like. Okay? You want that character to be your avatar. You don't really care that much about the starting class. That's okay. You can switch classes very early in the game. Second thing, there's an appropriate class for clan leaders. What I mean by this is that when you're playing Lineage 2, clan leaders are usually playing classes that are very, very, very inactive. They're not really... That's fine. If you guys want to be like a bunch of dwarves, that's fine. But there's never really a clan leader that really wants to play a super active class like a dagger or something like that, because you need to be paying attention to the battlefield as a whole. You need to be directing people, saying when you go in, go out. And when I say clan leader here, I just mean the person calling the shots. Of course, that can be someone else other than the leader if they delegate. Be adults, okay? You know what I want to say here. So we created a new class for Project Rebirth, and this class is kind of a stand-in for how Overlord used to work, in that Overlord had unique interactions with clan. The Royals, as they're called, they're directly from Lineage 1, and they have all of the unique interactions with a clan. In fact, you are not able to create a clan in Project Rebirth unless you're a Royal. And every clan can only have one Royal. So those classes are extremely macro level. They don't have complicated skill rotations. They have very long cooldown buttons where you press like one button, everybody gets like 50% PvP defense for 30 seconds. It's like, and I think the cooldown is 40 minutes. So those things are like very macro, very, I'm seeing, we broke the castle gate, let's go in, I'm popping the buff, go. They were designed from the perspective of, you press a few buttons here and there, but they affect everyone. That's more or less the idea of the Royal. This is also paying homage to Lineage 1. I really like Lineage 1 in a lot of manners. This is paying homage to the Lineage 1 comic. I really like the story of the Depardieu. So, you know, sue me if you don't like this. Don't actually sue me, just give me feedback, and if it sucks, unfortunately, we'll delete it from the game. Don't start... Listen, you guys are starting like a little dwarf union over there. Don't start like, hey, we're gonna say this sucks so she deletes it from the game. Don't do that, okay? Honest feedback only, please. I talked about this before, very briefly, but party size has been reduced. The original party size is 9 people. Lineage 2 is a game where every party has 9 players. Goddess of Destruction reduces that to 7 people. And then Project Rebirth is reducing that to 4 people. I'm reducing it to 4, not because I want to, but I'm just trying to be a little realistic. I almost consider making it 3. But that would be a little iffy, in my opinion. I'm doing this from the standpoint of being realistic because we're a private server that is heavily modified. Maybe this becomes something cool that a lot of people like, but maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, and we're just a couple of weirdos playing this version of the game, we need for content in the game to be able to be done by a small amount of people. So that is the real reason why party sizes were reduced. This wasn't like any crazy like, oh no, for the design to work, we really need smaller parties. It's just like, if we design the game for 4 people, it's easier to get 4 people together than it is to get 9 people together. So the content won't be locked behind, we just don't have enough people. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense, but that is the reason why party size reduction is a thing. If in the future this happens to be like popular and people like it, we might revisit this idea and increase party sizes. But for now, 4 people. Gameplay inputs in the game have been changed. If you play Lineage 2, you know that if you target an enemy and you try to do like a heal or some kind of like buff, some kind of like beneficial skill, you usually get a warning saying that that's not the correct target, and your buff is like just not going to come out, like nothing is going to happen. In Project Rebirth, we have this weird system where if you're targeting something that is not a friendly target and you try to cast something, you're actually doing a self-cast of that skill. So this is like a very normal thing in other MMOs that I never really liked. I never really liked this not being a thing in Lineage. Because, you know, sometimes you're playing a healer and the enemy tank is like aggroing you, and then you press heal and you heal the fucking enemy tank. So this kind of thing will make sure that when you're trying to use those things, if for some reason your target is not a friendly unit, you're going to be casting that on yourself. This also means that when you're playing like a healer, you don't really need to target yourself, heal, target the monster, switch to DPS mode, DPS. You can just keep the target on the monster and just press your skills for the whole thing. So I think this is like a really positive like minor change, but I think it changes a lot of how the game plays. This is an example of doing this on a party member. So you see that if you're doing this on a party member, you're actually gonna be casting it. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. That was cool to do. And then to finish all of this, I really wanted people who get interested in Project Rebirth, who dedicate themselves to Project Rebirth, if this becomes like an actual release thing that is always online and, you know, it's an actual server. I really would like for different kinds of people to be able to enjoy themselves in the game. So with a transmog and glamour system already implemented, this is one of the skeleton parts. I didn't do any work there. It's already part of the game. We give people who like want to farm or craft a certain armor because they like how they look. They want to find like the coolest armor, the coolest look. They just got like a new sword and they're like, oh, my armor doesn't match my sword anymore. Now I need to find a new armor, and they start farming that. You know, just give different player incentives to people, so they start doing things in the game that interest them, rather than the usual Lineage option that's just PvP, 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 fuck everything else, PvP, lore, doesn't matter, PvE, boring, PvP, we're here for PvP, no one else matters, PvP, PvP. Like, I want that to be removed from the game, okay? That mindset. I want different people to be able to play this and have a good time. Jesus Christ, my throat. It's almost over. And yeah, with everything that I said here, Project Rebirth is definitely going to move forward with an open development approach, meaning that changes are always going to be explained to people. I'm going to explain what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm going to release the changes, we're going to take feedback, and if the round of feedback is very negative, and there's no reason to think that that feedback is wrong, we are going to change it according to the people. I would much rather have a game that people feel like they have a say in the direction that the game is going, rather than replicating the homelessness that we feel with Lineage 2, and how many times we begged Korea to change this, do something about this, and they never ever listened to us. So yeah, that's Project Rebirth. There's more things that I couldn't fit into this presentation. There's a lot of things that I really wanted to get into details, like this is what was needed to create a single skill. This is what's needed to create a single equipment. But then if I did that, we would actually be here for 5 to 6 hours, and yeah, that would be too much. Yeah. Very quick recap. These are the points that were in the previous slides. Lineage 2 was originally designed for a PC bang environment. It is a repetitive game with single button presses. You usually don't play at a very engaging level. We try to address those things by introducing global cooldowns, rotations, combos. What else? You remember. My brain is mush right now, but you remember. We try to address a few of the problems, like class design leading into a class that's very inactive, very boring. You buff someone for like 20 minutes, you sit down, 20 minutes later you come back and you buff them again. By fixing those things, we're also addressing the issue of multi-boxing, or at least part of the incentive for multi-boxing. Changing how progression works so that quest rewards are all party-based, that XP distribution is always going to be split evenly about the amount of people in the party. So if you're 2 people killing the same monster in a party, you get the same amount of experience you would get if you were killing that monster alone. So all of those changes are aimed towards trying to create a game that doesn't incentivize the selfish, multi-boxing, boring-ass gameplay spirit of Lineage 2, I suppose. The soundtrack I already explained to you guys, like use of leitmotifs, give the idea to Lineage 2 veterans that the game is something else, something different. Being able to elevate gameplay with soundtrack, lore, world building, same thing. And we really need for this game to be able to let people take a break, have a vacation, go away from the game, and come back when they feel that they want to. So yeah, that's Project Rebirth, a crazy thing that I have been working on since 2019. And not tomorrow, I wish it was tomorrow, next week, we're gonna have the very first playtest, and we'll see how most of these ideas interact with one another in practice, in a live environment. That's it. That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your time. Everybody who stayed here for 2 hours and a half. You're awesome. And if you know developers, if you know people who would really be interested by this project, please send them my way. I need help, okay? I need help from all facets of the development world. I need coders, I need like database specialists, I need animators. I can do 3D modeling, but having more 3D modelers would be nice. People who want to do narrative design. I need people. So please send this message to any kind of Lineage developer that you feel you know that would be interested by this proposal. I am actually streaming this today, so I have a recorded VOD of presenting this project to people. So you can link the VOD to them and so on. That is it. Thank you, gamers. I am not gonna be able to speak for like 7 weeks. That's it. Let me get the Discord link. And There you go. If you want to join our Discord, there it is. Alright, I'm very tired. What were the things that you guys were saying here? Do I look pretty in this picture? This is an assassin. This isn't Throne and Liberty. Did Linnea think this was Throne and Liberty? No way. Damn. I really like the UI. Like, yeah, if you look at this, I really like the... What? Hello? What happened? Okay, if you look at this, I really like this UI element here, the little dagger. This is very similar to like a class job, like HUD element from Final Fantasy. I don't think it has much use in Lineage. It could very well be like a stack, but you do get overwhelmed looking at buff bars in Lineage. They're so volatile in the middle of combat. So I understand that. But yeah, assassins are cool. I really want to get the assassin models. I also want to get the Vanguard models and a few other models, but not as player characters. I think they lack a lot of the basic stuff for players. But I think it would be sick to have like an assassin as like a raid boss, you know? Doing the skills and everything that she has, the way that she walks, leaving like the after shadow. Like, it would be perfect for like a really cool and well-designed raid encounter. But yeah. Gamers, I need a break. Very sleepy. I didn't sleep well. I was very worried, okay? And yeah. That's it. I'm going to be a proper Lineage junkie. See what happened while I was away. And I hope you guys have a really cool day. And that's it. I think there were a few things we wanted to talk about after, but I don't remember what they were. I'm going through the chat. I don't have the time to go into a freezer. Project Rebirth needs to happen, Echo. I always find like a little thing that I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot to set this up properly. Dude, I love Lineage. such a weird relationship that we have with this game, but I love it.
何でも預かりますぜ。
忙しくてもお得意様は覚えてますよ。今日は何が必要ですか？
I'm not gonna keep up the stream. I was just waiting to see if whatever the points were going to be, if they would show up again in chat. So yeah, I'm gonna go, gamers. I'll see you in Discord. You can poke me, and next week let's give this whole Project Rebirth a real testing phase. It's gonna be fun. Bye, gamers.